right, good morning. So we're going to continue today with a bit more from Terence McKenna. But let me put that in context. Right? So last week, when I was talking about the foundational principles of practice, like what I think of when I think of why and how to meditate or to look on the experience of being human in a spiritual way, I talked through 4 different ideas. The first of those was the principle of practice. And go back and watch the videos from last week. But just to summarize, there's this intersection between the practice that is understanding the nature of self, the impermanent nature of self, the sort of procedural, quantum, ever-changing, impermanent self, the nature of our personhood, and then the sort of vast mystery of the manifestation of the cosmos. And the part of our practice is that intersection between what it is that is maintaining my my personhood, that's the metabolism that's holding my body together, right? And that vast mystery. Then I thought this week I would kind of dig into some of my held assumptions about what that mystery is. And I hope that's indicative of the qualifications, of course, that I want to approach this with, right? This is what happens when I look and kind of ask myself, well, what do I think is the universe, right? Like, these are questions that in some sense are not particularly helpful. They're not necessary. It's not necessary to have a metaphysics in order to practice meditation. It's not necessary to ponder the nature of the universe in order to understand the nature of self and alleviate suffering through that practice. But it is a wonderful and wondrous thing to do, to contemplate the vast mystery. And so there are a couple of ideas that I recognize I hold quite deeply. And that's interesting in itself, right? Like, you need to ask what you think in order to know what you think. So when I ask myself, what do I really think? I come up with these 2 ideas. The idea of a universe that is teeming with life, that is where consciousness is a precipitant from the original singularity. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The second idea that I'll talk about tomorrow, also from McKenna, is this idea of a hyperdimensional object at the end of time that illuminates mystics and visionaries and artists. But the idea of the end of time and this hyperdimensional object, this sort of teleological pole. And between these 2 ideas, fire and ice, whatever, is sort of my internalized creation myth. And I'm sharing it not to proselytize, not to convince you that this is the true nature of reality, but instead to demonstrate that we all have these narratives, and maybe it's front of your mind and you can recite the way you think about the universe, or maybe it's this can be a prompt to uncover your own held assumptions about what is it to be a human participant in the vastness or the mystery of the universe. So I'm going to start by reading a quote. And again, yesterday I talked about this. The material that we have from Terence McKenna, for the most part, comes in these cassette recordings of workshop sessions that he gave. And these workshops may have started with a topic, but the best parts of the workshops are these hours and hours of question and answer, where he would go around the room and people would ask whatever was on their mind, which may have been something to do with the preliminary talk that he gave, but most of the time were questions about the kinds of things that McKenna talked about in his life. So I don't know how to attribute this. I don't know where it came from. I don't know when he said it. But at some point I heard a recording and transcribed this. Out of atomic systems come chemical systems. Out of chemical systems comes the covalent hydrogen bond, the carbon bond, complex biology that is prebiotic or organic. Out of that chemistry comes the macrophysics, systems that we call membranes, cells, charge transfer complexes, this sort of thing. These systems are the chemical preconditions for life. Simple life, the life of the prokaryotes, the life of naked, unnucleated DNA that characterized primitive life on the planet. Out of that life comes eukaryotes, nucleated cells, and then complex colonies of cells, and then cell specialization, leading to higher animals, leading to social animals, leading to complex social systems. So I take from this in my marginalia around McKenna, right? So McKenna gives these raps, and they're like a pebble in the pond, and then the ripples ripple out and cause interference patterns with other ripples, and those troughs and peaks of the resonance of his ideas is a deliberate technique that he uses. But from that I get this shape of cooling and precipitation from the moment of the original singularity. And we can talk, and we will talk tomorrow when we look at the end of time, that second idea, whether that singularity was the beginning or whether it was a burp from a quantum anomaly from which the entire universe was birthed. Birthed from a burp. But regardless, at the first instant, there is no distinction. It is a singularity. Very quickly, very rapidly, these bonds, these atomic bonds, atomic particles, are revealed, right, as things cool. And then the more it cools, the more the space unfolds, the more the time is created, more complex chemical, atomic, physical interactions are able to occur because there is space and time, and because the temperature has cooled. So again, I'm thinking of this as precipitation. As if you have a liquid that is very hot and highly concentrated. As it cools, crystals fall out. We used to do this all the time as children. We would throw a bunch of salt or something into hot water, and then we would put a string in the jar, let it cool, and as it cooled, the salt crystals would grow on the string. That cooling and that precipitation and that formation, that revelation of complex systems is what enables the human being and all the vast array of biology that exists on our planet. And with that, and this is where McKenna gets into his idea of novelty, now that things have cooled sufficiently and precipitated enough that we have on our planet kind of a local aggregation of consciousness. And I'm going to pause and just say that again, a local aggregation of consciousness. Just as with gravity, there are pools of gravity, there's pools of consciousness. But just like with gravity, just like with the electromagnetic field, consciousness is present throughout the cosmos. And I make that statement as an articulation of what I have come to realize. I deeply believe that. It's a filter that I look at, that a filter that shapes everything I see is and I would urge you to challenge and question that. What do you hold to be the real nature of reality? We all do. You may think of yourself as someone who doesn't spend any time contemplating the metaphysics or the formation of the universe, but you do, and I would urge you to try to articulate that idea. So then we have human beingness, from which arises human culture and human language, and the ability to generate new structures of thought. And this is where the McKenna's idea of novelty comes in, and that over the course of human history, the periodicity of new, fundamentally changing ideas, realizations of our own, we're thought-creating machines, right? We are generating poetry and aesthetics. We're generating art, and humanity is a substance that we are creating through the act of being, through the act of our metabolism. We are creating new material, not material that was present in the first singularity. Right? I think that is something that when I look at my own held assumptions, that is what marks the beingness of humanity, is that we are capable of producing ideas that did not exist within the original singularity. And then where McKenna goes with that is this idea of novelty, that the window required for radically new ideas shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And then he pointed to the Mayan calendar in 2012 as a return to the singularity. And you know what? I have no evidence to suggest that we did not approach and pass through the singularity in 2012, because there's no reason to think that the end of time means the end of material existence. If we were living in a black hole, what would it look like? It might look like this. I don't know. But just another important point when I scrutinizing my own held assumptions, I do think something special happened in 2012, which is now 13 years ago. Can that be? Regardless of, and we can, maybe in a bit we'll come back and talk about the singularity of 2012. It's not on my plan for this week. In fact, I hadn't thought about it until just now. The idea of novelty and human ideas, human ideation, as introducing new material into the cosmos, with which the cosmos interacts. And yes, I privilege the idea of human ideation, but I do not think that ideation is uniquely human, because as the cooling and precipitation occurs, like with gravity, centers aggregates of consciousness. Uh, it just makes deeply intuitive sense that humanity exists, and then in a different part of unfolding space and time, some other aggregate of equally profound consciousness also exists. Novelty, beauty, aesthetics, we humans, as we exude being human, we are leaving an epiphenomena of grace and creativity. And that is our place in the cosmos. So let's leave that for there. Tomorrow we'll talk about the end of time. So this, like I said, this is a grand week for big ideas. Don't get too wrapped up around them. Don't take them too seriously, but do take them as an invitation to articulate your own assumptions about what it is to be a human in a universe where we can meditate. And let me know what those assumptions are as you articulate them, because each one of you will come up with something quite wonderful. And I would love to hear it. And if I get a bunch of them, maybe I'll do a follow-up video where we just share some of those radically different ideas about what it is to be alive. Anyway, keep your wits about you.